What's up, people? Joe Winko here, your favorite Hawaiian guy, and here's my next episode of Joe Winko Talk. So, before I get to what I'm going to be talking about, I just want to announce one thing. It's finally October. Well, it's been October for a while, but you guys know what I have every October. Yeah, candy corn. To be completely honest with you guys, I'm not really entirely thrilled with this stuff so much anymore. But seriously, I have to have it every single October. I mean, it wouldn't be October without it, so it's only fair if I have some. I really only eat it when my blood sugar gets low, to be honest with you guys. But I still like it anyway. It's an October thing. So yeah, here it is. So on with this episode. So this is going to be a really personal episode of Joe Winko Talk. Nothing morbid or gloomy, but it is going to be personal and it is going to be quite negative, honestly. Nothing really happy at all, but nothing too depressing, I guess, whatever way you plan on looking at it. It's going to be about my personal life, but there's also going to be quite a few X-rated things discussed in this episode. So if you're under 18, please don't watch this video or please don't watch this episode because it won't be appropriate to you guys. Just letting you know. Also, if you're homophobic, you really shouldn't be watching this video either. Seriously. Or any of my videos for that matter. This is also going to be a continuation of a previous episode of Joe Winko Talk that I did a while ago. I'll have the link to it in the pinned comments. This episode of Joe Winko Talk is going to be about the failures in my gay love life, Volume 2. Yeah, told you it wasn't going to be anything really happy. Those of you who've been watching me on YouTube for a long time already know this by now, but for those of you who haven't been, I have actually been looking for a lover and a partner for a very long time. I'm on tons of different dating sites. I even did a whole video showing every single dating site and every single dating app that I have a profile on. However, I never had any luck with it at all. It seems like I always run into guys who are very rude and very disrespectful and very judgmental. And the thing is, I usually never make the first contact. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes I do, but most of the time they're always the one to contact me first. But we never seem to connect at all. We never get together, and here I am to this day, still single, as I have been for a really long time. I'm going to be talking about some of those guys who I failed to connect with in this episode of Joe Winko Talk. I'm not actually going to say any of the guys' real names at all, and I'm not going to show you guys pictures of them either, but I will be telling you about each of them, where I met them, how old they were, and what went wrong with each of them, exactly as I did in Volume 1 of the failures in my love life. I actually really been wanting to talk about this in a video for a very long time, but for a while I really didn't feel comfortable doing a video about this because a lot of the men I'm going to be discussing in this episode are no longer here with us anymore due to the things going on in the world. And I'm going to be getting to that very soon. So the first man I'll be talking about is a man named Sinji. He was a man I met on Tinder, who I matched up with on Tinder, who was in his mid to early 30s. That's what he appeared to look like in his picture. I actually thought that he seemed pretty cool at first. However, me and him didn't talk for very long because he made a horrible first impression on me that really struck me the wrong way. We never met in person or anything, but as soon as we matched, he messaged me first and he said, "Hi, you're very beautiful, I want to talk to you." And I replied to him and I said, "Thank you, you're very handsome too, what's up?" And we were only talking for a little bit, but he asked me what was I looking for on Tinder. And I told him I'm looking for a lover and partner and someone to be with. And I asked, "Is that what you're looking for on Tinder?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm looking for a lover and partner too, and I'm looking for a relationship." But then he threw this at me, and he threw it at me pretty aggressively. Remember, we were typing back and forth to each other, but it came out horribly. He told me, "I'm looking for a lover and a partner, but my family comes first before anything." And he just threw that right at me out of the blue. Now, don't get me wrong, I would never try to separate a guy from his family at all or anything like that. I mean, I'm not close to my adoptive family at all. You guys who've been watching me on YouTube long enough would know that. But it really struck a nerve when he said that to me, honestly. First of all, I must have been in a bad mood that day. I did feel a bit offended that he thought that I would try to separate him from his family when we barely even know each other. But I think the major thing was, subconsciously, I probably felt like he was throwing in my face how I don't have a family at all, and it was reminding me how I don't really have a family. Because as I said earlier, I'm not close to my adoptive parents at all, and my biological parents were horrible people. They're both actually dead, and I'm actually glad that they're dead. Most of the time, I really do not mind that at all. I never even minded it when I was a kid, really. But for him to say family comes first before anything, that really struck a nerve with me. And then I replied to him and I said, "Well, I didn't say anything about separating you from your family. You don't have to tell me that." And then he said, "Well, I have a mother and two sisters who I have to take care of, so my family comes first." And I just felt that that was really off-putting for him to say that to me right away as we started talking. And it did strike a nerve with me, and I didn't appreciate it at all. So I just stopped talking to him and didn't talk to him again. I mean, if he really wanted to talk to me, he could have kept messaging me, or he could have even called or texted me, because I have my phone number on Tinder, but no one ever calls or texts me at all when they see my phone number on a dating site or a dating app. I mean, seriously, I literally give my phone number out like candy, but no one ever calls me at all. Not even the killer from the Scream movies, honestly. But that's probably something that I should be grateful for. But it still kind of hurts a bit. And the weird thing is, I'm usually never the one to cut ties with a guy at all. Usually he's the one who cuts it off with me and stops talking to me. I didn't unmatch him and I didn't block him or anything like that. I just stopped messaging him and he stopped messaging me and we stopped talking to each other. So as I said, we really weren't talking to each other for very long, but I definitely felt like that was an honorable mention in this episode, Failures in My Love Life Volume 2. A great way to start it off, really. But how would you guys feel about that, honestly? Can you let me know in the comments? How would you feel if you matched with someone on a dating site, or if someone messaged you on a dating site saying that they were interested in you, and right away they threw at you, "My family comes first, though"? How would you feel if someone on a dating site said that to you right away, before you guys even got to know anything about each other? It struck a nerve with me, but I was thinking that it's probably my autism mind that caused me to take that the wrong way, because I think of things differently because of my autism. But I'm just wondering, how would you guys feel? Let me know in the comments of this video. But that's not all. There's actually a lot more, and it gets worse. Trust me. The next man who I'm going to be talking about is a man named Paul. He was this man in his 50s who I met on a site called Black Men's Reign. For those of you who don't know about the site Black Men's Reign, I did an episode about the site Black Men's Reign and my experience on the site Black Men's Reign. I'll have a link to it in the pinned comments. It's basically like this dom and submissive dating site where black men are like dominant and every other man who isn't black is submissive, and all the guys who aren't black worship the black man, and that black men are like superior, and basically it's a bunch of guys who like black men, and it's a dating site, and it's meant for black men to be masters and for non-black men to be submissive and for them to get together. And I signed up for that site, and as I said, I did a whole video about my experience on that site. I'll have a link to it in the pinned comments because I actually am part black myself, and I had myself listed as a master on that site, and I was trying to find a lover and a partner because it was like a dominant and submissive dating site, and I wanted to find a guy who was submissive. But it obviously did not go well, as I explained in that video, and as I'm also explaining in this. One of the guys who I talked to from that site was the guy who I just mentioned, Paul. Now, Paul was a guy who didn't live too far away from me. At that time, I was living in Pinellas County, Florida, and I believe he was living up in Pasco County, I guess. I don't remember the exact location. He told me that he was looking through my pictures on Black Men's Reign, and he told me that he thought that I was very handsome, and he thought that I seemed like a very sweet guy, and that he wanted to get to know me, and he wanted to meet me, and he wanted me to be his master, possibly. Which basically kind of means that he would want me to be his lover and partner. So me and him started talking to each other, and we talked quite a bit, really. But what I was picking up from him was that he wasn't really interested in me. He was more interested in just having sex with me and us doing like kinky stuff together, because that's one thing that a lot of the guys on the site Black Men's Reign are into, really, like being dominated and stuff like that. And to be completely honest with you guys, I don't really get too into that. I mean, like, I was just, the only reason why I signed up for that site is because I was looking for a lover and a partner, and I was just trying to like expand my playing field, I guess, if that's my best way of describing it. And I was just thinking, okay, if a guy likes me because I'm part black, then even better, I guess, really. But I wouldn't want that to be the only reason why he likes me, and I don't want a guy to only like me just because of the sexual stuff, really. I want a guy who likes me for the things I'm fascinated in, the things I want to do, and the stuff that goes on inside my head. For an example, I really wanted to find a lover and a partner who likes to drive and go on road trips. There's a lot of places that I've been wanting to go, and I actually have a map of all of them right here. Here it is. So that's a map of everywhere I wanted to go, and I was looking for a lover and a partner who likes to drive and go on road trips, and who would want to take me with them, and who would want to take me to those places. Because every single place on that map, I plan on doing a video at. That's the reason why I want to go to all of them. And there's a different reason for each one. None of them are random at all, honestly. Because that's what I wanted. A guy who also likes my YouTube videos and understands that my YouTube videos are very important to me. It's how I get myself out there, and it's how I express myself. And it's also how I preserve myself too, so there's something left behind after I kick the bucket, and there's a way for people to remember me and who I was and what I did while I was on this earth, and the things I was fascinated by and what was going on inside my mind, too. So as we started talking to each other and getting to know each other more, I started to tell him about my YouTube channel. And you guys have to remember, this man was in his early 50s, so he was obviously a lot older than I am. Like, all the guys I'm talking about in this video are a lot older than I am. So none of them, well, not exactly none of them, but an overwhelming majority of them were not really interested in my YouTube videos, didn't really seem too interested in my YouTube videos. That's something that I always been disappointed by, but kind of numbed up to because so many men who I've talked to are like that. But I told them that I like doing videos and posting them on YouTube, and I also told him that I was looking for a lover and partner, or submissive lover, as I would call it, or a slave, as the people on Black Men's Reign would call it, who liked to drive and go on road trips too. And I told him that, and I tried talking about that with him. So, as I said, we both were living in Florida. I mean, I still live in Florida right now, in a different part of Florida, but we were both living in Florida. And I told him that one place I've been wanting to go was northern Alabama. And the reason why I've been wanting to visit northern Alabama was because back in year 2011, there was this really bad tornado that ended up striking northern Alabama, and it was the longest track tornado in Alabama history, and it was also the deadliest tornado in Alabama history, but it occurred out in a rural area in northwestern Alabama, and even though it destroyed many towns and traveled like a great distance, the storm didn't really get that much publicity. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to go to northern Alabama and film a video about the tornado that struck northern Alabama and show all the towns that it hit and film clips at all the towns that it hit and put them all together. And it was going to be like a memorial documentary because it was going to be dedicated in memory of all 72 people who died in that tornado, because I felt sorry for all of them. And also because I found it interesting, honestly. So that's what I told him. I was saying that I think me and him should get together, and after we get to know each other, we should go on a road trip to northern Alabama. But he honestly didn't really seem interested in doing that with me at all. To be completely honest with you, every single guy I talked about that with, none of them ever seemed interested in doing that with me at all. And the thing is, I actually did get to go on a road trip like that, except it wasn't through Alabama. It was actually in southern Illinois, and that was the path of the tri-state tornado, and I did a whole video about that. I'll have that linked in the pinned comments as well. It was actually my adoptive dad who took me on that road trip, and it was a lot of fun. I loved going there, really. But that was the kind of video I wanted to do for the 2011 tornado that hit northern Alabama. Eventually, over time, me and Paul actually lost contact with each other, and I didn't hear from him for a long time. It wasn't until later in year 2019 when someone on Black Men's Reign actually messaged me and told me about him. And he told me, hey, I've been seeing all your posts on Black Men's Reign. I see that you're looking for a slave, or submissive lover, as I prefer to call it, really. And he told me, I actually know a man who used to talk to you, who was actually very interested in you and wanted you to become his master. But because you wanted him to take you on road trips so you could do your YouTube videos, he got scared off from you and wasn't interested in talking to you anymore. And I got kind of angry when this person told me that, and I told him, well, the thing is, I don't want a guy who just wants to have sex with me. I want more than that. I want a guy who wants to spend time with me, who would want to go on a long drive with me, and who would want me to do my YouTube videos, and who would know that that's something I'm passionate about, and who would want me to have that, really. Because if a guy really liked me and was really like in love with me or something, he would want me to be able to have that opportunity, and he would want me to be able to do that. But then eventually, this guy who messaged me on Blackman's Rain, he told me who this guy is, who he's talking about. He said it was Paul, and I was like, oh, I remember who that is, because I didn't know who he was talking about at first. So then he gave me Paul's number, and he says, well, you and him could still talk if you want to. So I got back in contact with Paul, and we started talking to each other. When I was talking to Paul, he actually told me that he was also afraid of me because of how the black masters on the site, Blackman's Rain, are. And I understand that because most of the black masters on Blackman's Rain, most of them are really strict and really disrespectful, and they're not very nice people because remember, they view themselves as dominant and view themselves as masters and superior. So you all know how someone who gets really into that isn't going to be very nice to people, really. So a lot of them are really harsh and really disrespectful, and a lot of the guys on that site are actually into someone like that, which is honestly one of the major reasons why I never had any luck finding a lover or partner or submissive lover on the site Blackman's Rain. Because if I'm with a guy and he's nice and he's sweet and he's caring and he's taking me on long road trips and I'm doing my YouTube videos at the places I wanted to visit and he's happy about that and he's my lover and partner and we're spending a lot of time with each other, I'm not going to want to be mean to him or disrespectful to him or trash talk him or slap, hurt, and abuse him or spit on him at all. That's what a lot of the guys on the site are into. That's what they claim to be into. But I'm honestly not into doing that. I mean, not even into like talking about it or anything like that because I think that's kind of messed up. If a guy is being that nice to me, why am I going to be harsh and abuse him like that, honestly, because that's exactly what a lot of them want. But Paul told me that he didn't want anyone like that, and he said that he wanted to get back in touch with me because he noticed that I was more loving and sensual, and he was happy about that, and he actually appreciated that. And that was something that I never really heard very often from sites like FetLife or Blackman's Rain or Collar Space or anything else like that. So I appreciated that too. So we started talking to each other again, and he told me that he might be open to actually going on a road trip and taking me to northern Alabama so I could do my video about the tornado. However, he told me that he might not have time to because he's usually busy with a lot of stuff, really. And around the time we started talking to each other, it was around September of year 2019, and there was a hurricane out in the Atlantic Ocean, and that was Hurricane Dorian. Now, I was living on the western coast of Florida. Like nowadays, I live in inland Florida, like far away from the water, so I don't even have to worry about that. But back then, I was living on the western side of Florida in Pinellas County, and I was really worried about that, honestly, because I was scared that what I was worried that Hurricane Dorian was going to do, because they kept saying this on the news over and over again, that it's going to go across the state of Florida. I was worried that it would make landfall along the eastern coast of Florida, and as it's going across the state of Florida, it would weaken because it's going over land, but I lived in Pinellas County, and between Pinellas County and the peninsula of Florida is Tampa Bay. And I was worried that once it gets into the waters of Tampa Bay, if the waters are warm enough, it would re-strengthen and then become really powerful and cause damage to Pinellas County, which it would have, really. I mean, it wouldn't have necessarily needed to be very powerful. I mean, if it would have been a Category 3, that would have been bad enough to wreck the place in Pinellas County that I was living at. And I'm always really conscious about hurricanes, and I was worried about that. And that was around the time me and Paul were talking. When me and him were talking to each other, He told me that he owned a lot of property all over Florida, and he also lived in inland Florida. He lived in Pasco County, Florida, which is basically, he didn't live by the water, but he lived far enough away from the water. And I tried asking him if I could stay with him for a couple days when the hurricane starts getting close because I was worried. But he told me that he couldn't have me over at his place at all. And I was kind of like, oh, really? And he said, no, I don't want to have you over at all. I don't want to have you over at all. Now, I'm not allowed to have visitors where I live either because it's a rule of my adoptive parents, but it's because of my adoptive parents. I can't have people over. But he straight up told me that he didn't want to have me over, even though a hurricane's out in the Atlantic Ocean, and he's saying that he wants me to be his lover and partner and his master and everything. I mean, I know that me and him hadn't had met yet, but it still kind of put me off a bit when he told me that. Like, it's like he didn't even seem concerned about me being worried about the hurricane, really. And I at least wanted a guy who cared about my well-being. But we were planning to meet each other because I kind of just figured that probably the reason why he didn't want to have me over at all is because we haven't met each other in person yet and he doesn't really know me yet. But he kept saying that when we get together, he wants to suck me off right away, and he wants me to come in his mouth, and he wants to rent a hotel room and have us be together and wants us to have sex with each other. Now, the thing with me is I never like doing sex with any guy on the first meet, honestly. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of times that ended up happening, too many times that ended up happening. I never really go that far with a guy, though. Usually, when I get sexual with the guy, all he does is just suck me off and swallow my load, and that's it. And it never progresses further than that because it just turns out to be a hookup. But that's usually all that happens, really. I have to warm up to someone before I have intercourse with them, but that's another thing that he was really wanting from me, and that's another thing I told him, that I have to warm up to someone before I have intercourse with them. And I could tell that that was kind of putting him off a bit. As I was saying, it seemed more like he was just interested in having sex with me. He didn't actually seem to want to become my lover and partner, even though he was saying that, like everything else about me, when I was telling him about my YouTube videos, when I was telling him that I did a new video today, or that I read about this online today, he never really seemed interested in any of that at all, really. And I was definitely picking up on it. I mean, even though I'm autistic, I still notice some stuff. Probably some stuff that normal-minded people don't even notice. But he also didn't even seem to understand my worry about the Hurricane Dorian, out in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I did try asking Paul if me and him could still get together and get away and go somewhere during Hurricane Dorian, but he told me that he wasn't able to do that, because I understood that he didn't want me at his house, but I thought, couldn't we at least go somewhere else just to get me away from Pinellas County in case this hurricane ends up moving across the peninsula of Florida? But he said that he doesn't think he would have time for that at all, and that he wouldn't be able to do that. That's basically exactly what he told me. So he started telling me when we were talking to each other on the phone, he told me that I should just hide at a hurricane shelter instead. And I was like, a hurricane shelter? And shelters are honestly a last resort option because they're usually very crowded, and they recommend people to evacuate and go someplace safe, not to go to the shelters. And I didn't want to be in a shelter with a whole bunch of people during the hurricane, and I told him that. And he told me, well, it's better than being dead. And that also really put me off, because I was thinking, okay, you want me to stick my penis in your mouth. I have no idea what else you had in your mouth, but you want me to stick my penis in your mouth because it turns you on and everything, when I don't even know you at all. You want to rush into it with me. But yet, when a Category 5 hurricane is out in the ocean and is about to make landfall in Florida, you won't even make an effort to get me out of Pinellas County, which is something that's not very difficult. He could have definitely done it, but he was like refusing to help me at all. And I took that pretty personally, really. But eventually, me and Paul, we stopped talking to each other. The reason why is because it was after the hurricane passed. It didn't end up moving across the peninsula of Florida, so I didn't really have to worry about it. He told me that he was really stressed out and that the reason why he's busy a lot is because he has a 25-year-old autistic son that he's taking care of and who he has to watch after and who he has to help a lot. And he told me that he didn't have time for a relationship at all, even though he was saying that he wanted me to be his master and his lover and partner and everything. He was now officially telling to me that he doesn't have time for that at all in real life, really. And we just lost contact with each other after that. And when he told me that, I was like, oh, really? You have a 25-year-old autistic son who you're taking care of, and that's the reason why you don't have time to be my lover and partner. Now, that kind of struck a nerve with me. Don't get me wrong, I definitely understand he should take care of his 25-year-old autistic son. I mean, seriously, he needs his help, and he needs his dad to be there for him. And it's not like I think that his dad should be with me instead of helping his autistic son, honestly, because I definitely understand that, because I have autism myself. But this is one thing that I wish I would have asked him. I was tempted on asking him this, but I didn't ask him this because I didn't want it to blow up into a huge fight, and I didn't want it to get ugly at all, because believe it or not, I actually try my best to avoid drama. It may not seem like it, but I honestly do. He doesn't want to be with me at all, and we never met each other. He didn't have time for me at all because he's too busy taking care of his autistic 25-year-old son. It made me wonder, how would he feel if his 25-year-old autistic son was looking for a lover and a partner and signed up for a dating site, and this random guy was messaging his 25-year-old son saying that he was interested in him and saying that he wanted to be with him? How would he feel if that guy actually just wanted to have sex with him and just wanted to hook up with him because he had a fetish for him or something like that and didn't actually want to be his lover and partner? How would he feel if someone did that to his autistic 25-year-old son? Because this man knew that I had autism. But that's the thing that I wanted to ask him, because that's the exact same thing that he was doing to me. And I thought that was kind of fucked up and really unfair, honestly. It was disappointing, but I didn't really think about it too much. Me and him just stopped talking to each other, and I just thought, me and this guy are not a match. We stopped talking to each other, and that's it. That's the end of it. But there's more, honestly. More guys who I'm going to be talking about in this video. The next man who I'm going to be talking about is a guy named Pablo. He was a guy who I actually met on Grindr, and he was like, I believed he was in his 40s. When we were talking to each other, I could tell that there was something a bit off about him, and there was something a bit sketchy about him too. This was back in January of 2021. He came to Pinellas County, Florida, because he was living around the Orlando area, and we got together and we hung out one night. He drove this van, and he owned a towing company, that's what he told me. But when I got in his van, he had knives, like, all over the van, like, everywhere. And I thought it was kind of creepy. I was like, why do you have all these knives? And he said, well, I work for a towing company, and when I come to tow someone's car, they always get mad at me, so I have the knives just in case they try to fight me. And I thought that was really sketchy, but I was like, oh, well, okay then. And we hung out with each other that night. It was only for that one night. We were basically sitting in his car and I was talking to him and he was talking to me, but I could tell that he wasn't really interested in the stuff I was talking to him about. He did kind of seem interested in some of it though. I told him that I really like to go on road trips and he said, "Oh yeah, me and you could go on a road trip with each other." And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. I'd love to go on a road trip with you." And I was like, "Okay, we could definitely do that sometime." So I was happy about that, and I got excited about that too. But then he did one thing that I'm not okay with. So we were talking about going on a road trip with each other very soon, and I told him that I had a lot of 5-hour energies to keep me awake so I'm not asleep during the drive at all. And then he told me, "Oh, well, I never take 5-hour energies. I just use this instead." He pulled out a pipe and he started smoking meth. And he told me it was meth. That's how I knew. He told me that he takes it because it helps keep him awake. And as soon as I saw him pull that out, I got freaked out and I was like, "What? No, 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 no. Can you roll down the windows, please?" And I was freaked out by that because the thing is, as I was saying earlier, my biological parents were horrible people who, luckily, I didn't have to spend much time with. I don't remember them at all. But they abused drugs. And when I was first born, I was actually born addicted to heroin and meth. So I never use that stuff at all, never have used it. I'm completely straight edge. I never do any kinds of drugs, and I don't want to be with someone who does drugs. Because it turns out that one of my ex-partners actually passed away from a heroin and meth overdose a really long time ago. His name was Barry. And I never even knew that he did those drugs because I was really young back then. I didn't know what the warning signs of drugs were. I didn't know what the symptoms of drugs were or anything like that. But he had passed away from a heroin and meth overdose. And it was really devastating and really sad. But the thing was, I didn't want to be with someone who did meth. So as soon as Pablo pulled out the meth pipe, I just asked him to take me home and that I was freaked out of that stuff. So he dropped me off at the place I told him to pick me up from earlier, and I just went home, and he was really upset about it, and he kept texting me over and over again telling me that he would stop doing the math. And things got a bit weird. He kept saying that he misses me and that he liked spending time with me and that he liked having me sitting in the car talking to him and that he wanted to see me again. But I kept telling him that I didn't want to see him again because I knew that when someone does meth, they become completely addicted to it and there's no way to get off of it. I never heard of anyone getting off of meth before, really. I mean, yeah, I don't know why they say babies are born addicted to meth, because I don't really understand that at all. But where that actually comes from, it means that the baby is suffering from what their parents were using, from what their mother was using. Like if a mother is using meth and she has a baby, that baby will be suffering from the effects of the mother using meth. That's what they mean when they say someone is born addicted to meth, not that they actually use meth or anything like that. But I didn't want to be around meth at all. I didn't want to be associated with anyone who does meth. I didn't want that stuff anywhere near me because I don't I don't like illegal drugs and I never use them and I never want to use them. Honestly, I avoid them at all costs. But for some reason, he kept messaging me over and over again and he wanted to meet me again and see me again. Luckily, the thing about me is that I have this natural power of repelling people. When I want someone to go away, and when I want someone to leave me alone, and when I want someone to never talk to me again, 100% of the time, they will go away, and they will leave me alone, and they will never talk to me never again. Every now and then, I have to stress that even more on some people, but in this case, Eventually, he did leave me alone, and shortly after that, I never heard from him again, and I'm honestly glad about it. So, Pablo was another man who I wasn't compatible with. Therefore, I figured it was worthy mentioning him in this Failures of My Love Life Volume 2 episode of Joe Winko Talk. So, this is where things start getting a bit more personal, really, and a bit more intense, I guess, if that's the correct word to use. Really because of what ended up happening to this man. So, the next guy who I'll be talking about in this episode is a man named Bradley, and he lived in Indianapolis, Indiana. I met him on Facebook a really, really long time ago. This was back when I was living in Wisconsin before I moved to Florida, so this was definitely a long time ago. Me and him actually weren't in contact for very long. I believe he saw one of my posts on a gay Facebook dating group of me saying that I was looking for a lover and a partner. And this is while I was living in Wisconsin when I wasn't living with my adoptive parents because things back then were really hard. That was a really hard time in my life when I was posting the video saying that I was looking for someone to live with because I was scared of becoming homeless. And I was saying that I was looking for a lover and a partner to go live with. And I really hated being in Wisconsin, and I wanted to get away from Wisconsin. And I wanted to go live in Florida or some state down south that's warm, far away from Wisconsin, honestly. Now, Bradley lived in Indiana, but I told him that I wanted to live someplace warm because he started talking to me on Facebook Messenger, and he said that he was interested. He was single and looking for a lover and a partner also, and he thought that I looked very handsome, and he was okay with me being a top, and he said that he was interested in me, so we started talking to each other about that. We never actually met at all, but he said that he wanted to see pictures of my penis, so I sent him some pictures of my penis, and he told me that he liked them, and he thought I was really sexy, and he said that he wanted to be my lover and partner. And again, it seemed like all he was into was just the sexual stuff. He wasn't interested in anything else. I told him that I post videos on YouTube, but he didn't even seem to bat an eye at that, really. Eventually, he ended up asking me, what do I do for work? And I honestly hate it whenever a guy asks me that question. Like, whenever someone asks me that question nowadays, I tell them, I don't want to talk about it right now, but you can ask me anything else. That's what I tell them. But back then, I didn't know better to answer like that. The thing with me is I can't hold a job at all because of my autism, but also because of my ADHD and my type 1 diabetes and a couple other mental conditions that I suffer from that I really don't feel comfortable listing in this YouTube video. I did a couple episodes of Joe Winko Talk about that, and I'll have them listed in the pinned comments of this video, what happened the last time I had a job, and it didn't go so well. That's something that I really don't like talking about at all when people ask me that because it's personal, and I just hate it because every single guy I talk to asks me that question. However, I'm on food stamps right now, and I'm able to get all my insulin and all my medical stuff through the state health insurance and everything. And I'm currently waiting to get approved for a disability right now because that's exactly what I have. Autism, ADHD, type 1 diabetes, a couple other mental conditions that I don't feel comfortable listing. And that's exactly what my psychiatrist told me that I should do, and that's exactly what they said I should do and everything, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Even my lawyers told me that there's a very high chance that I'll get approved. But that's something that I really don't want to talk about much. And that's what I told him. So, over time, he would throw that in my face every now and then. I mean, not really harshly, but he would bring up that it's going to be very difficult with me not having a job and everything. And I looked at his pictures on Facebook. He seemed pretty well to do. Seemed pretty well to do. Past tense, because I'm going to be getting back to that. He had like a fancy car. He lived in a fancy house that he posted pictures on all over Facebook. And he said that he was planning on moving down south and he wanted to take me with him. That's what he was saying when he was talking about becoming my lover and partner. And then one day he just told me that it wasn't going to work, that I don't have a job at all. And he says, oh, it's not going to work. I'm looking for someone to grow with and be in a relationship with, not to take care of someone. I can't support you at all. And then he blocked me. And it was before I even had the chance to tell him this. What do you mean that you would be supporting me? I mean, I'm able to get my own food. I get that from the state. I'm able to get my own medication and my own medicine, my own insulin. I get that from the state also. Not to mention my adoptive parents help me with a lot of stuff too. But I hate it when men tell me that they would be supporting me because I'm able to get my own food and my own medication from the state. I don't need their help with anything. And it's just stupid how they throw that in my face, seriously. But it all comes back to these guys being judgmental and rude and disrespectful. That seems like the type of people that I tend to attract for some reason. So eventually I forgot about this guy. I never talked to him again. But it wasn't until recently when I found out what actually became of him. So, as you all know, the world is going through a pandemic right now, the coronavirus pandemic, aka COVID-19, a virus that has killed millions of people all over the world. And me and him were talking on Facebook, that's where we met, but he blocked me. And I don't know why I did this one day, but I have an alternate account on Facebook. And every now and then when someone who I used to talk to online, who I'm no longer in contact with, pops in my head, I'll use that alternate account to look them up and see what they're up to now. And I did that for him one day back in 2020, like late 2020, during the heart of the coronavirus pandemic. And what I discovered was that his profile page on Facebook was converted into a memorial page and that he was dead. And I was like, oh my gosh, he actually died? And I started reading some of the comments on his Facebook page, and I saw some people typing in that he had died of coronavirus. And I also read that he was still living in Indianapolis, Indiana at the time of his death. That's where he died at in November of 2020. So he never ended up moving down south to Florida or any other southern state. And I moved to Florida long before 2020. Now, I thought of that, and I thought about how I wanted to live in Florida. And I thought, maybe if he would have gotten together with me and him would have been living in Florida with each other. But it was his decision not to get with me at all. And some more facts about me is, I was one of the first people to actually get the COVID-19 vaccine. I got it way back in September and October of 2020 because I was in the coronavirus vaccine trials that were actually going on here in Florida. I mean, they had them going on in many other states around the USA, but the one where I got the COVID-19 vaccine at was here in Florida. And I thought the same thing about the South Carolina backstabbers. I did a whole episode of Joe Winko Talk about them. There are these two guys who I was supposed to live with in South Carolina who rejected me, and then they ended up getting killed by Hurricane Florence. But with Bradley, I was imagining if me and him were together, if he would have chose to be with me instead, and if we would have moved to Florida together, there's a very good chance that he wouldn't have died at all, because I was able to get into that COVID-19 vaccine trials, and he most likely would have been able to get into them too, and we both would have been able to get the vaccines, because he died in November of 2020. But I got the vaccine in September of 2020 and October of 2020. So he most likely would have got them too, and he would have still been alive. But because he was too judgmental to be with me, because he was too stuck up to be with me, that never ended up happening at all. Maybe someplace in an alternate timeline where he was less judgmental and less stuck up and we would have gotten together, he would still be alive. But in this current timeline, he's dead. He died of COVID-19 in Indianapolis, Indiana in November of 2020, a month after I got my coronavirus vaccine, and right when my coronavirus, well, pretty long after my coronavirus vaccine was in full effect, because it takes two weeks for it to take full effect. Right then, he died of COVID-19, and that probably wouldn't have happened if he would have been with me instead. But he didn't make that choice, and as I said, every choice that he made in his life led to him dying of COVID-19 in Indianapolis, Indiana, and he never got to move down south someplace warm. He lived to be 50 years old, 50-something years old. I forgot how old he was, but he's dead now. And you know, the really creepy thing about it is, as you guys all know, I make a lot of scary movies with The Sims 2, and I always have myself in them all the time. But the thing is, a lot of people in my Scary Sims 2 movies are actually based off of real people I meet in real life. Specifically the ones who pissed me off and wronged me, because a lot of people die in my Scary Sims 2 movies, and it's always someone who I didn't like. If there's a character in my Sims 2 scary movie and they're based off of someone who I knew in real life and they die in that scary movie, it's always someone who I actually didn't like. I'm not going to tell you which movie it is, but in one of my Scary Sims 2 horror movies, I actually had a character who was based off of him and who actually died in the movie. Really. And it was just chilling seeing that he actually died in real life, because I remember he died in my Sims 2 horror movie, and I was just like, oh wow. So that was kind of the reason why I didn't really want to do this episode of Joe Winko Talk for a while. That's why it took me so long to do Volume 2 of Failures in My Love Life. But yeah, that was that, really. But there were also a lot more guys who I talked to online who ended up dying of coronavirus also. And another guy who I talked to online was a man named Will from FetLife. That's where I met him. He lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, like around that area. I don't remember the exact city. He messaged me on FetLife because he saw all my posts on FetLife of me saying that I was looking for a submissive lover and a submissive partner to be with. And he sent me a message saying that he was interested in me. He thought I was really handsome. He thought it was cool that I liked to go on road trips. He said that he likes to drive and go on road trips also. And he said that he's also into photography, and he loves that I like making YouTube videos, even though he never really watched any of my YouTube videos at all. And I can definitely confirm that, because whenever we tried talking about it, I'd ask him if he watched any of my YouTube videos, and he said that he hasn't watched them yet. That's what he would always say. We actually did talk to each other on the phone, and we did get to know each other quite a bit. This was also back in September of 2019. As I started talking to him, I also learned that he was actually in a wheelchair. Like, he wasn't paralyzed from the waist down or anything like that, but he couldn't walk and he couldn't stand up for very long. So that's the reason why he was in a wheelchair. But he was still able to drive, though, because he had some movement in his legs, but just not that much. And I was honestly okay with that, really. It didn't bother me at all that he was in a wheelchair. I mean, I was fine with it. And I thought he was really handsome, and I thought he was really sweet. But we kept talking to each other more, and then that same question eventually came up: what do you do for work? And at that time, whenever a guy asked me that, I wasn't really knowledgeable enough to tell him that I don't want to answer that right now. So I was just completely honest with him. I told him I couldn't hold a job because of my autism, ADHD, and my type 1 diabetes, and that I was disabled. And I could tell that he was a bit put off by that when I told him that, really. Because right away he said that he's also disabled, he's in a wheelchair, and that he has a great job making tons of money. And then at that point I figured that there was an issue here. Because what people don't understand is that a psychological disability is always more complicated and always more difficult than a physical disability, really, because it's something that affects your mind. Not to mention that I actually kind of do have a physical disability, my type 1 diabetes. It causes a lot of issues in my life. If any of you saw that video of me having a hypoglycemic episode, you guys would definitely know what I mean by that. I'll have that linked in the pinned comment somewhere if you guys want to see that. But there's more stuff it actually causes besides that. And having that on top of the autism, ADHD, and the other psychological conditions that I suffer from, it makes it very difficult, really. And I already explained like what happened the last time I had a job. I didn't tell him that, but I told him that I tried having a job before, but it definitely didn't go so well. So then over time, I noticed that he would start to talk to me less and less, and like it seemed like he was just slipping away from me. He wouldn't respond to my text messages and he wouldn't talk to me at all. I mean, every now and then he would send me a text message and I would talk to him and I would call him about stuff, but we never really talked that often. It was just small talk, really. Another thing is, like, I usually take a long time to reply to text messages. I did an episode about that too. I'll have that video linked in the pinned comments. I did a video of me talking about that. And it seemed like he would get upset by that. And I told him, you should call me instead. That's better to do that. That's the best way of getting a hold of me. But he never really been into calling me that much, really. I mean, he would, but he wouldn't like talking on the phone with me that much for some reason. And then one day he sent me a text and it said, we need to talk. And then I was just like, sure, what's going on? That's what I texted back to him. And he said, you always take forever to reply to my text messages. Even though I know you don't have a job, you always seem to be really busy. And then he basically threw that in my face and he said that I don't remember exactly what his message said after that, but I believe it was something on the lines that it's not going to work out or something, but it didn't really seem that obvious that that's what he was telling me. And then I typed in, oh, why are you saying that? I'm sorry it took me a long time to reply to your text messages. We should call each other sometime. And then he just replied with an LOL. That's one thing that I do remember. And then I was like, what's so funny? Why are you typing that? So it kind of seemed like he was replying with a message saying that he didn't want to talk to me anymore. And I didn't interpret it correctly. I thought he was just upset with me because it was taking me a long time to reply to the text messages, and he was laughing at me because he thought I was too stupid to understand what he was trying to tell me. But eventually I read his message again and I understood what he was telling me, and I was a bit upset about that, really. I mean, he didn't need to tell me that, because in all honesty, if he would have just stopped texting me, what would have happened eventually is I just would have forgot about him. So then a couple weeks after that, and that was around October of 2019, I messaged him on FetLife because I felt offended that he typed in LOL afterwards, because who the hell does that, really? That's really mean and really disrespectful. And I also felt offended that he thinks that just because I don't have a job, that I'm not busy with anything, because I do my YouTube videos. That's one thing I'm really passionate about. I do that a lot, and that takes up my time, really. So I figured someone would at least understand that, really. And if he wanted to get with me, then I could have been with him and doing my YouTube videos if we're going on a road trip somewhere, and we could do them together. But no guy ever wants to do that with me at all. But I messaged him on FetLife because I was upset at the text messages he sent me, because he stopped talking to me for a really long time after that, and I understood that he meant that it was over, even though we never really started anything. We weren't together, but he was just cutting me off and he didn't want to talk to me anymore, and I was upset by that. And I typed into him, "You didn't have to send those text messages, and you didn't have to be such a jerk. If you didn't want to talk to me, all you would have to do is just stop replying to my text messages and stop texting me, and I would have just forgot about you. You didn't have to be a jerk and say, 'We need to talk, you take too long to reply to my text messages, it's over,' and stuff like that." And then he replied to my message on FetLife, and he told me, "I already forgot about you. You were a horrible master. All you wanted to talk about was me supporting you and everything. And we were never together." And then he blocked me. And I was really pissed off about that, honestly. Because, as I said earlier, what the hell do you mean you're supporting me? I'm able to get my own food and my own medication and insulin from the state. I don't need your help with any of that. So what the fuck you mean you're supporting me? Also, before I messaged him, I looked at his profile on FetLife. He had a lot of nasty stuff on his profile on FetLife that I didn't notice at first. That's how a lot of guys on FetLife are. He was into like peeing his pants and everything and wearing diapers, and I didn't even notice that at all. He never talked to me about that at all. But he had pictures of himself doing that on his FetLife profile, and that's something that I'm really not into at all, but that was something that he was into. Was into, past tense, because this man also ended up dying of coronavirus. I had his phone number and I looked him up on Facebook, and I also saw that his profile was converted into a memorial page, and I found out that he had died, and I was reading the comments on his profile and they were saying that he had coronavirus, and that's how I found out that he died of coronavirus. And it's exactly the same as the last guy, Bradley, who I was talking about. Maybe things would have been different for this man if he wasn't so judgmental and stuck up towards me and wasn't so disrespectful like that at all. Really, maybe things would have been different for him. Maybe he would have been able to get into the vaccine trials with me, and maybe he would be alive right now. But he didn't, and he will forever be 39 years old, and he's dead now, and officially will never be with me. And you know, it's honestly his loss. Better him than me. I know that sounds a bit cruel and a bit heartless, but you know, it's about time that karma actually started working in my favor, and it's how it is. It is what it is. Now let's move on to our next guy. This man was named Zoe, and he was from California. He found me on FetLife, and we started talking to each other there. And me and him seemed to click with each other much more. He was 49 years old, and he was really skinny, like really skinny, and he was also athletic because he was a biker, so he would always ride his bike a lot. That's why he was really skinny. But he was kind of skinny at an unhealthy level. That's what it kind of looked like to me. But I didn't really mind it at all, because I don't really care what a guy looks like, really. He said that he loved my YouTube videos, and he thought that they were very interesting, and he used to comment on them a lot whenever I post them on Facebook, because me and him were friends on Facebook, and he liked my fan page on Facebook. It turns out that for a while, back in September and October of 2019, this man would comment on all my videos I post, and I would notice that because Facebook would give me like a list of the most active members on my Facebook fan page, and Zoe's name would always show up. He was always watching my YouTube videos, and he always liked them all the time. And I thought that was really sweet of him, and I thought he was nice, really. He also would get gifts for me off my Amazon wish list, and I did a couple thank you videos for them. We didn't really talk extremely often. It wasn't like we were texting each other every day, but we did talk quite a bit, really. We were talking to each other, and we were also making plans of meeting each other. He wanted to come to Florida to visit, and I'm not sure why. Looking back on it now, because remember, this was a long time ago, so I don't really remember everything. But looking back on it now, I'm not exactly sure why I preferred for him to come to Florida instead, because usually I prefer to go and visit the guy wherever he lives. But I think it was because I already took a Greyhound bus ride out to California that summer, and I didn't really feel like doing that again. So I think that's probably the reason why we were considering having him come to Florida and visit instead. But he also knew that I liked road trips, and he wanted to take me on a road trip too. One of the first faults that me and Zoe kind of ran into was the fact that I'm a total top, meaning that I don't like to suck penis at all either. And I tell every guy that because I want to be completely honest, because I don't want any guy to get with me thinking that I'm going to suck him off, because I don't do that. I'm actually disgusted by that. I love having my penis sucked, but I don't like sucking other guys off, really. And also, my teeth are very sharp, so you wouldn't want to put anything in my mouth. Also, I have this instinct, whenever something goes in my mouth, I have the urge to bite it and chew it apart for some reason, no matter what it is. So that's also another good reason to not put your penis or anything in my mouth at all. So I told him about that while we were talking on the phone, and he kept telling me that his sperm was really sweet. And I said, but I don't like sucking penis at all. And as soon as I mentioned that when something goes in my mouth, I feel like chewing it apart with my teeth, and that my teeth are really sharp, and that I don't like having penis in my mouth, as soon as I mentioned the teeth part, that's when he stopped telling me that his sperm was sweet. So, yeah. But he said that he didn't mind. He said that he was okay with just sucking me off and having me be the top, and that's the kind of guy I'm looking for, really. But as I said, we weren't really talking every single day, and it wasn't like our plans were written in stone or everything, because I never know what these guys are thinking, or if they might change their mind about me one day and stop talking to me, because an overwhelming majority of them so far have done that. Well, basically almost all of them have done that. Otherwise I wouldn't still be here and wouldn't still be single and everything. But that's the thing, I never know how things are going to work out. So I was still posting posts on FetLife saying that I was looking for someone, and I made a post in this one group on FetLife, because the way FetLife is, they have different groups for each location, and I don't just post in Florida. I post all over the different groups on FetLife, like for the groups in Mississippi, or the groups in California, or the groups in Texas and Arkansas, Oklahoma, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, where people from those states, they go to the groups and they look at the posts there and see like who's single and everything. Because I mean, I tried finding someone in Florida, but then I thought, why just look in Florida? Why not post in the other states too? I mean, to at least expand my horizons. I mean, because those are states that I have been wanting to go to. I can't really say that I'd want to move away from Florida and live in Mississippi or California or Connecticut, but those are states that I have been wanting to go back to, so I would post there. And I made a post in this one group for Alabama on FetLife. I typed in that I was looking for someone to go live with in Alabama. And when I made that post, I was feeling down that day and a bit depressed. It was when I was with my adoptive dad's brothers, when I was living with them, and I never liked living with my adoptive dad's brothers. I didn't really mind it that much back then, because that was before coronavirus. But I still would rather have been somewhere else. That's what I was thinking about, because I didn't like Clearwater, Florida very much, or Pinellas County. That's where I used to live. I didn't ever want to leave Florida at all, but I was thinking if there's no one else in inland Florida who would want me to come live with them, then I'm open to going to Alabama at least. It's not that far away. But also because I've really been wanting to visit Alabama, as I explained earlier. So I made that post on FetLife, but then he commented on that post and he typed in, "Oh, it's really sad that you're posting this." And I kind of got upset that he commented on my post because me and him were not officially together yet. Really, we hadn't even had met, and our plans weren't even foolproof at all. He didn't even tell me the date he would be coming to visit Florida at all or anything like that. It was before we figured out a date for him to come visit Florida, but he typed in that he was really upset that I posted that on FetLife. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Because I got really upset that he commented on my post because it made it seem like I already had someone and that I was already with someone, even though I really wasn't, because I had no idea what he was going to do. Guys tell me that they want to be my lover and partner online all the time, but if you tell me that online and we haven't even had met yet, I can't take that seriously, really. I seriously cannot take that seriously because you could change your mind, you could ghost me, and I could never hear from you again. So I didn't think it was right for him to like lock me down like that when we're not even together at all, when I was still alone and still by myself exactly as I am today. So I typed in, "What do you mean by that?" And he typed in, "Never mind." And I called him on the phone about that and I typed in, "Why are you commenting on my post on FetLife?" And he said that it was really sad and really hurtful because he thought that I didn't like him anymore and that I didn't want to talk to him anymore, and that I was posting on Alabama section of FetLife that I was single and looking for someone in Alabama. But I told him, me and you aren't together yet, but if you come to visit Florida and we get along good, we will be together then. So why are you typing in that you're sad? I mean, we aren't together yet. And then he said that he was sorry and everything, and I told him that I was sorry too. And then eventually we kept talking to each other, and then eventually he came up with plans to visit Florida. And somewhere along the line I told him, well, since you're visiting Florida, me and you should go on a road trip together to Alabama, because he said that he wanted to go on a road trip with me, and Alabama is only one state away from Florida, so I thought it would be fun for us to do that, because I told him about the YouTube video that I wanted to do up in Alabama. He was planning on visiting sometime in November of 2019, and what he said instead was that we shouldn't go to Alabama. He wanted to drive around Florida instead. And at that time, I had already been all over Florida. He wanted to go to Daytona Beach, and then he wanted to go down the east coast of Florida, and that's all he wanted to do. But I wanted to take an adventure outside of Florida. But at that time, I didn't really mind. I was like, okay, we could drive around Florida if you want to. But I told him I'd still rather go to Alabama instead. And then he told me this. He told me, well, you're the only one who wants to go to Alabama. And he says, I don't want to be sitting in the car while you're doing your YouTube video and just sitting in the car waiting for you to finish doing your YouTube video. Now that's the biggest misconception, honestly. When I'm out doing a YouTube video at some place I wanted to explore, you don't have to sit in the car and wait. You could go out there with me and be my second cameraman if you want to and take pictures of me doing my YouTube videos. That's exactly what the strangers out in California did when they brought me to California and when I was doing my YouTube videos there. And that's what I told him. But then he told me that that does not interest him at all. And that was another fault we ran into, because I wanted someone who understood that I was passionate about doing my YouTube videos and my adventure videos. I even told him exactly why I wanted to go to Alabama, but he said that he wasn't into that at all, and he straight up told me that. And I was just like, oh, well, okay then. And I still had my doubts about it. I was thinking, okay, I don't think this is going to work, but it was what it was. But then I was just okay with us getting together and going down I-95 around Florida. Not outside of Florida, but just in Florida. There was also another thing that Zoe got really upset about. Now, back in October of 2019, I posted my episode of Joe Winko Talk of the Failures in My Love Life, Volume 1. And when I posted that, he sent me a text message saying that we need to talk about that video, Failures in My Love Life, Volume 1. And it was basically the same thing of what I'm doing now, talking about the guys who I talked to online who turned out to be assholes and everything. He said that that video was very hurtful to him. And I was like, how is it hurtful? What did I say? I didn't say anything about you in that video. Those were a bunch of other guys who ended up ditching me and ended up stabbing me in the back. It had nothing to do with you. But we talked about it on the phone one day, and he told me, I just didn't like how that went. I didn't like how you just talked about those guys who you talked to, and all they are to you now are just bad guys who you talked about in your video. And that's all they are now. And then I said, well, me and you, I mean, like, when me and you get together, you won't become that at all, because me and you will get together, and me and you will be together, and you won't be a guy who I talk about in my videos. Because I hardly ever talk about guys who I actually like and who I'm actually friends with in my YouTube videos. I rarely do. And if I do, it's because they've done something really good. But even then, I rarely talk about guys who've done stuff that was really good, because, I mean, people on YouTube like hearing the drama, really, not the positive stuff. That's what draws people in. If it bleeds, it leads. I guess that's the term I'm looking for. But he was really upset by that, and he said that it was really mean how I talked about those guys. But if you watch Volume 1 of Failures in My Love Life, how those guys talked to me was really mean. What they said, like the one guy who said, oh, I know I'm going to be the breadwinner in this relationship, but you got to figure out a way to get to Sarasota. That guy was an asshole, but it just offended me that he took their side instead of taking my side. And I thought that was fucked up and wrong for some reason, honestly. But eventually, things came to an end between me and him. So that was it. We planned on him coming to Florida and us going on a road trip around Florida with each other. But then one week he called and he told me that he can't do the road trip with me because he has to work that week. And he says, oh, I'm sorry, I can't come to visit Florida. Work comes first. We're going to have to reschedule in April of 2020 instead. But remember, this was before we knew about COVID, but we stopped talking to each other long before the coronavirus pandemic started. So then he told me that he can't come to Florida, work comes first, and he made it sound like really disrespectful and really harsh when he told me on the phone. But then, right after that, he told me to send him some pictures of my penis. Now, I was disappointed because I actually was excited to go on the road trip to Florida with them, because even though that's not where I wanted to go, I was still excited for the road trip because it's still a road trip, even though it's in a state that I spend too much time in, really. Well, any state can become a state I spend too much time in because I like the adventure, but I was still excited to go on that road trip with him in Florida, and there was a much nicer way for him to tell me that. He could have just told me, Joe, I'm sorry, but I can't go on the road trip. But he did it in a really harsh way. He said, work comes first. I can't go on the road trip. I have to work that week. And then right after that, he tells me to send him pictures of my penis. And as I said earlier, I wanted a guy who likes me for more than just the sexual stuff, really. But when he asked me that, I mean, I was already a bit burned about not going on the road trip, and then asked me for pictures of my penis right afterwards. It kind of struck a nerve with me, and I didn't appreciate it at all. And I called him about that, and I told him that. I told him, why did you have to say it like that? And why did you have to ask me for pictures of my penis right afterwards? And he says, well, it is true. Work does come first. And I told him, Well, there's a nicer way of saying that to me. And then I thought of us going to Florida again and being out there in Florida in April of 2020, before I knew about coronavirus. This was before anyone knew about coronavirus. I told him, you won't want to go to the beaches in the east coast of Florida because they're going to be super packed with a bunch of stupid, drunk college kids on spring break. I don't want to do that at all, really, because I don't want to be around a bunch of drunk college kids on spring break. That's not going to be fun at all. Let's just go to Alabama instead. And he told me that he wasn't interested in going to Alabama. And then somewhere along the line during our conversation, I don't remember exactly how it went, but I told him that a stranger who was watching my videos on YouTube had already sent me a bus ticket to North Carolina in November of 2019, because that's when we were calling each other. And I said, so I'm busy that time. We were supposed to get together anyway, but it was after you canceled it, so I have something else to do. And the stranger who invited me to North Carolina, there was nothing sexual between us at all, but that situation also ended up going bad too. But I'll be talking about that in another video. But Zoe got upset and jealous of that, and I even told him that there was nothing sexual going on. He's just a YouTube fan who wants me to come visit because he saw my videos on YouTube of me visiting the strangers out in California, and he wants to go on a road trip with me because he thought my videos were funny. But Zoe got upset with that for some reason. And then somewhere along the lines, we started arguing and a fight broke out. And when we were arguing, I even mentioned that he was being really rude and really mean. And I told him, do you want to just end up another guy in my Failures of My Love Life Volume 2 episode of Joe Winko Talk? And that struck a nerve with him, and that's when he really went off on me. He told me that I wasn't a good person and that he wasn't interested in me and that he wanted me out of his life forever. And then he hung up on me, and I never heard from him again. And never will hear from him again. And officially, I am out of his life forever. Or he's out of my life forever, officially, because Zoe ended up dying of coronavirus in April of 2020, and he was 49 years old. He was living in California, a state that was hardly hit by coronavirus. He did block me on Facebook, but as I did with Bradley, I looked him up on my alternate account to see how he was doing, just because I was curious, not because I cared at all, because he was a jerk. And I found out that he died of coronavirus in April of 2020, and it didn't really surprise me. It did freak me out at that time because that was actually someone I knew who died of coronavirus. Well, I didn't really know him. I never met him in person. And as I said about the previous men, things most likely would have been different if he wasn't that judgmental and if me and him would have got together instead. And I would have gotten into the vaccine trials and he would have gotten to them also, and he most likely would still be alive today. But because of the choices he made, he's not alive anymore. He's 6 feet under, just like Will from Michigan and just like Bradley from Indianapolis, Indiana. It's just really eerie that he's actually dead right now, honestly. I mean, I don't feel sorry for him because I just don't feel sorry for him because me and him could have been together, but he was the one who ditched me, and he was the one who stopped talking to me, really. I mean, if he really wanted me to be with him, we definitely could have got together. I probably should have went to visit him out in California instead, but things just fell apart between me and Zoe. Am I sad about it? I mean, I am disappointed because I'm still alone, still don't have anyone. It does kind of creep me out when he's knowing that he's dead. I mean, it still kind of gives me the chills right now. That's why I didn't want to do this episode of Joe Winko Talk right away, because I was going to do this episode in 2020, but with coronavirus going on and knowing that so many men who I've talked to online have actually died from this virus and seeing their memorial pages on Facebook, I just didn't feel comfortable talking about it till now. And now that I'm away from my adoptive dad's brothers with 3 coronavirus vaccines in my system, I feel comfortable talking about it. But It was just, it's just really haunting, honestly. So, the last guy I'm going to be talking about, this guy actually did catch coronavirus. He was one of the first guys to catch coronavirus, but it was long before I met him. He was one of the first guys to get coronavirus in March of 2020. This man was named Nate. That's the name I'm going to use in this video. That's not his real name, but that's the name I'm going to use in this video. We met on the R for R section of Florida on the site of Reddit, and that alone right there, I mean, I never had any good luck with people I met on Reddit. It always goes wrong. That alone right there should tell you that things went bad. I was really looking for friends at that time. It was way back in April or May of 2021. I posted on Reddit that I was looking for a man to hang out with because all guys just wanted to hook up with me and it was getting annoying. So that's when Nate replied to my post and we started talking to each other. We went to the park one day and we played frisbee golfing or something like that, which I thought was pretty interesting. It wasn't something that I was entirely into, but I thought it was pretty interesting. And it was just good getting out of the house and away from my adoptive dad's brothers. And I felt safe going out of the house because I already had my COVID vaccines. I had them for quite a while at that time, but I felt safe going out of the house at that time. And also because the coronavirus cases back then were dropping. But there were still some things that I didn't feel safe doing, like eating in restaurants. I didn't feel safe doing that. Now, after I found out that I got my coronavirus vaccines and after I found out that I got the real shots and not the placebo, I actually felt safe getting together and meeting up with guys I talked to on Grindr and hanging out with guys I talked to on Grindr. And whenever I would get together with a guy I talked to on Grindr, he would want to go get some food whenever we were hanging out with each other. And I'd always tell them that I'm too scared to eat inside restaurants. I don't want to do that because I'm still worried about COVID. I mean, even though I had my vaccines, I know that the vaccines aren't 100% effective. And I just didn't want to have my mask off inside with a whole bunch of people. And every single guy I told that to respected that. And we would just go through the drive-thru instead. Except for Nate. He wasn't taking coronavirus seriously at all because he already recovered from it. He didn't think it was a big deal. So he wasn't even considering the fact that I have type 1 diabetes that puts me at high risk for dying of coronavirus. Even though I was vaccinated, it's still unsafe because no vaccine is 100% effective. And he knew all that because I told him that. And I told him that I'm not comfortable eating inside of restaurants, yet he would insist that we would eat inside restaurants. And when he would bring me inside of a restaurant, I would keep my mask on the whole entire time. Therefore, I wouldn't eat anything. So I'd just be sitting across from him. He'd be eating all the food, stuffing his face. He wasn't really the skinniest man either. And I was just thinking, I can't do this. What the hell am I doing here? I mean, I hate being around my adoptive dad's brothers because, like, up until the last day I was at my adoptive dad's brother's house, I always wanted to keep my distance from them and always wanted to stay away from them, even though I was completely vaccinated. I wouldn't want to go be in the same room as them. I wouldn't even leave my bedroom until 3 hours after they left because I read online that that's how long it takes for particles of coronavirus to fall out of the air because I was worried that the coronavirus would be floating in the air if they had it, and if I walked out into the hallway, I'd get infected with coronavirus. That's basically how 2020 and 2021 were for me, living with my adoptive dad's brothers, which is why I hated them so much and wanted to get away from them, because I knew they weren't taking it seriously. Even with the vaccines, I still was in that mindset, rightfully so, really, because they didn't want me there either. And that's the whole reason why I was looking for people on Reddit to hang out with, so I could just get away from my adoptive dad's brothers, because I didn't trust my adoptive dad's brothers, because I knew that they didn't want me there at all. And I thought that if I hung out with someone on Reddit and they were my friend, they would be careful enough to make sure that I wouldn't catch coronavirus from them, and they would be careful enough to make sure that they wouldn't catch coronavirus. And he told me he already had coronavirus, so the only reason why I was comfortable being with him for the time was because I figured he can't get it again if he already had it, because I heard about reinfection with coronavirus, but I also read that it was very rare, and I figured that I wouldn't have to worry about that with Nate. However, he took me out to eat at a restaurant and was insisting that we ate at the restaurant and have my mask off, which I didn't do. That's how I knew that he wasn't taking COVID seriously at all. And that's how I knew that it wasn't safe to be around him if he's trying to get me to do stuff like that. And he even was getting upset with me about that. Because we took road trips up to Jacksonville. Those were a lot of fun, and I liked going up to Jacksonville. But he would always want me to eat at the restaurants with them. And I didn't want to do that, and that upset him. And that's when I thought, you know what, me and this man cannot be together, really. And also another thing, he was actually one of the guys who I casted a love spell on. I talked about that in my previous episodes of Joe Winko Talk. I'll have a link to that in the pinned comments of this video. But I actually asked him about that, if I could cast a love spell on him, and he thought that it sounded sexy. And then I did, and I think another major thing was the spell backfired, because that sometimes will happen. I mean, he seemed to like me, not in a good way, really. He seemed to like me, because he always wanted to, suck me off a lot, but he wasn't good at sucking me off. He was horrible at doing it. I even watched the How to Suck My Penis video with him that I made back in 2017. I'll have a link to that in the pinned comments. But he wasn't good at sucking me off, and I wouldn't want him to suck me off. And I think subconsciously, how he didn't care about my health, how he was insisting we eat at the restaurants, even though I felt really uncomfortable. I didn't feel comfortable with him at all, and that's why I didn't want to get intimate or sexual with him ever again. So I just stopped talking to him, and I thought that was a perfect way for me to conclude this episode of Failures in My Love Life, because so many of these guys who I talked about have died of coronavirus, and then I meet this guy who doesn't even take it seriously. And I even told him about the guys who I used to talk to online who died of coronavirus. I knew one of the first people who died of coronavirus. It was someone I used to talk to online in Italy. But that's a whole nother story that I'm not going to get into in this episode of Joe Winko Talk, because that's worthy of its own episode of Joe Winko Talk. But that's the thing. I mean, I wanted someone who actually cared about me and my health. I mean, even though he wasn't at risk for anything, at least be considerate of me. But he was insisting we eat out at restaurants, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to hang out with this guy anymore. And I didn't even tell him I don't want to see him again. I just stopped talking to him. I stopped texting him. I didn't block him, but I stopped texting him, and he stopped texting me, and we just drifted apart. Didn't even need to say, I'm not talking to you anymore, really. That's mainly how it is, really. But he just stopped texting me. It wasn't like I was ignoring his texts. He just stopped texting me, and that was it. But it is what it is. So that's basically everyone for this episode, Volume 2 of Failures in My Love Life. But I want to close off this video with saying this, and I wanted to show you guys this. So that's a master-slave contract that I typed up. Now, I'm thinking about revising that because a lot of it seems like really strict and everything. It has no legal standing, but the only reason why I have that is because this one guy who I was talking to on Blackman's Reign, who I talked about in my Blackman's Reign episode of Joe Winko Talk, he thought it would be sexy for me to type up a master-slave contract because that was one thing that he was into. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll type one up, and so I did. And he wanted me to make it really strict and everything. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's the only reason why it seems really strict. I mean, basically all I want is a nice guy who would want to live in Florida and who likes to drive and go on road trips and who's a total bottom and who likes to suck my penis a lot and who would want to spend a lot of time with me, want to be with me, and who would like my YouTube videos and understand that I'm passionate about them and who would want to be my lover and partner. That's all I'm looking for. It doesn't need any strict rules besides that, but that's all I'm looking for, really. And I just wanted to show the contract because I thought if you showed that to every single man on Earth, if it was possible to show that to every single man on Earth, make every single man on Earth aware of me and aware of what I'm looking for and everything, I'm convinced that I would find at least one guy who would be okay with all of that and who would want to be my lover and partner. That's why I'm on so many different dating sites, and it's not the main reason, but that's a major reason why I post so many videos on YouTube and why I always try to make myself as accessible as possible. Just in case I run into one guy who actually likes me and likes what I want to do and is interested in me and is interested in what I do and appreciates me and wants to be with me. That's another reason why I post so much. But it's really the luck of the draw. I mean, there's a specific card that I'm trying to draw, but you're not going to draw it on the first draw at all, or even on the second, or the third, on the fourth, or on the fifth. Sometimes you just get dealt with a bad deck, really. And that's definitely what I have been getting dealt with so far. But it is what it is. I keep trying, and I'll keep trying, and yeah. So that's it. Volume 2 of Failures in My Love Life. Which guys do you think were worse? The guys I talked about in Volume 1, or the guys I talked about in Volume 2? And what did you think of this episode of Joe Winko Talk? Let me know in the comments. And another thing that I'm going to announce, I'm actually going to be doing a gaming live stream tomorrow to celebrate Halloween. I'm going to be in my costume and everything, which is, well, not really a costume. I'm basically just going to paint my face like a clown and wear my clown collar and everything, because that's what I do every year. Since 2018, I always paint my face as a clown, so I'm excited to do that. And I most likely will be doing a gaming live stream of me playing Resident Evil. I wanted it to be Resident Evil 3, but I might end up playing Resident Evil 2, because I have to beat it with Claire Scenario A and Leon Scenario B. No, Leon Scenario A and Claire Scenario B. But I might just go to Resident Evil 3, since I already beat Resident Evil 2. So yeah, stay tuned for that at least. It's happier news. We need some happier news based on everything I talked about in this episode. So don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. And let me know what you think in the comments of everything I talked about in this video. And make sure to stay safe. So that's it. Peace out, people.